Hello.
Hello,
Adrian.
hello.
You excited? We're talking about DevOps today.
Yeah,
Do you know what DevOps means?
sometimes. I just asked ChatGPT, so I think I'm prepared.
Hello to our live viewers. Hello Tobias. We have Brian Finster with us. Hello, Camilla. Camilla, did you want to join us on stage, or is it okay? We spoke
She
about it yesterday.
she excused herself today.
Okay, all good, all good. I just want to make sure I didn't forget to send the invite link. Let's see who is with
Hey,
us.
Grant.
Ivan, hello. Warren made a comment earlier. Özgür, hello. We have a lot of new faces that I didn't invite. So it seems we did start to spread the stream.
He meant that in a
organically.
positive way, so everyone is invited.
Yes. I meant it in a positive way. So, so word of mouth is starting to function. I don't have to, break my back with the LinkedIn invite interface. Wow. Tuesday mornings, I have it in the calendar. Invite everybody to the event, and it's just manually clicking. So yeah, that might be actually very similar to what we're talking about today. Today is all about DevOps. So, Adrian, DevOps is your topic primarily, and I like
it's both topic, right?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I like the philosophy around it because we both of us started our career in a time where DevOps didn't exist. You put DevOps into Google, you got nothing back. You just got some random weird results from Google that nobody cared about, set up by some bot farm.
It is the same today sometimes, but yeah.
No, but there are so many conferences today and books. It's DevOps this, DevOps that, DevOps days, DevOps blah blah blah. DevOps is everywhere, and it seems everybody's using it for something else. Like the word itself, like the word has many different meanings, has many different contexts. So excited to talk about it. So we're talking about DevOps in the context of how you can apply it, how you can understand it, and how you can apply, let's say, primarily the 24 principles from the Accelerate book, which we're reading on the book club right now, and we're meeting in 2 hours, so we do have a hard stop today because we're not stopping, we're just continuing with the book club. We do have some book club. Team Accelerate, are you with us in chat? I'll see you in a few hours on the book club. That one, yes, that one.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. How would you define DevOps? Our agenda today is basically small, medium businesses. DevOps, what is it? How should I care? How should I apply any kind of new information that I learn about DevOps? Because it seems we talk about it a lot, we don't apply it. This is especially true in startups, especially true in small, medium businesses. DevOps seems to be this sort of this neglected, sort of very, very far right-leaning sysops title for somebody managing a Kubernetes cluster. And I don't think that's a fair way of... I think that's the narrowest definition of DevOps that I've seen used, and sadly, quite often.
Sadly, actually, because it doesn't have anything to do with that. So DevOps is not a person, and it's not really a team. It is basically a mentality. It's a culture. It's a way of seeing things. End-to-end responsibility, those kind of things that you actually own the process. So you are able to own the process from beginning to end. So which includes the idea that you basically run your product. So there. The phrase "you build it, you run it," basically derived from that. And what we just described the DevOps engineer, we heard that really often in the past. You still can read that everywhere, especially when it comes to recruiters. They often ask for a DevOps position. So what is a DevOps position? What they mean actually is a CloudOps person, a Kubernetes specialist, an IT sys guy, SREs. So those people are actually ops guys. Let's say they're looking for ops people. Sometimes even platform engineering people, they are not even part of the actual team.
Or cloud architects, or somebody who understands the sort of the cost, the operational cost of running.
And this is more a type of action you do inside a team which tries to follow the philosophy. philosophy of DevOps. It's not
the word DevOps is actually what IT architects used to be. Like what IT used to mean 20 years ago is actually how many people use the word DevOps today.
that's true. Yeah.
If you're with us in chat, let us know if a random non-technical person in your company asks you, "What is DevOps?" What would you say? This is to you out there in chat. For those of you who are with us live, I would love to hear how would you explain DevOps to somebody within your company. If somebody asks you, "What is DevOps? This DevOps thing? What is it? Are we doing it? What does it look like in our company?"
Mm-hmm.
How would you address that? I was really curious, and we have an answer already.
Yep. Two already.
Mr. Brian Finster is with us today. So I really like Donovan Brown's definition: the union of people, processes, and products to enable the continuous delivery of value to our end users. Brian, thank you. And thank you for being with us. I think you attracted quite a crowd today. So thank you for that. You had a very positive influence. You had a very positive influence on the stream already. Let me just real quick. I just want to check how many people we have live. Yeah, we have a good number.
And it's a good definition, actually. So
yeah.
The union is a very, very important aspect. So end-to-end responsibility means you need to unite all disciplines necessary and all practices necessary, all methodologies, all ops methods necessary to actually create a product and run a product. And this is the idea, which doesn't mean that there's another wrong assumption sometimes where you think everyone in a team needs to be a DevOps engineer. That's wrong too. So not everyone needs to be able to set up everything, do everything. It is more like you need to have all disciplines in the team.
I think this idea of a DevOps engineer is a bit misguided, because it's not. I like that. Yes, Brian, you. I think your network saw that you're joining today, and it attracted a bit of a larger crowd than usually. I was just responding to Brian in chat real quick. I like that you, Adrian, I like that you use the word product, and I see it in Brian's comment as well, because ironically, we should have called this product engineering ops, not DevOps. I mean, if I were to describe it to somebody, it is the let's say the degree to which product engineering runs their own operations, right? Like that's, to me, that is how I would sort of my Eli 5 for what DevOps is. It's not about keeping the servers up. I mean, to some degree, yes, but not in a way where that is a department that is handed off the responsibility to keep the lights on for the servers and do nothing else. It's more this vertical integration, this sort of shift left policy, shift left this movement to introduce responsibility and ownership over, let's say, the systems required to run a product built on software, or a product built on embedded systems or hardware, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a mainframe of some kind, maybe it's web applications, maybe it's embedded systems. From the book Accelerate, the research is vast, and we can see that the core idea of DevOps as a whole is combining the two pillars of product design and development and delivery. Now, the way I understand it, and Camilla also said in chat, the responsibility of maintaining CI/CD going as a team. It's a very strong definition, and I like the simplicity of it, because it's this idea that maybe it has to do a lot with delivery, or maybe it has to do a lot with the ops of the systems that the engineers need to build the system. But I think the easiest way to describe DevOps to somebody who's non-technical would be to, using a restaurant analogy, it is this equivalent of somebody running their own kitchen and making sure that they're taking care of cleaning and they're taking care of logistics. It's essentially how you'd run a Michelin star restaurant. Like, you don't leave anything to chance. You check. The chef checks the ingredients. The chef gets and picks the food and has it delivered. So everything that is crucial to the operation of the kitchen and to providing an excellent service is left to the kitchen itself to plan and organize. There isn't this handoff thing where the business owner might order ingredients in bulk and then the kitchen just cooks, right? So that would be, let's say, a separation, a siloed environment where you have two different departments and they hand off things to each other. And DevOps is the opposite of that. DevOps is, I think, in a purely agile way, it's a team effort. Yes, in a purely agile way, you would say, let's define success for our entire, let's say, vertical, for the entire business, and let's be responsible for every element of that. That would be, let's say, the point of agility would be to, in that context, would be to create your own process, to define, are we going to do this to Michelin star level? Are we doing this to some food truck street level where we are like super lean, we can go anywhere, we can adapt to the weather, we can be anywhere we want, but we have a standard, and regardless of where we are, we will uphold the standard, and we will define the standard, and we will improve the standard. Tobias is a very good response as well. Let's read that out loud for our listeners, because we are on where are we, Adrian? We're on Substack podcasts, right? You started uploading them there?
Yeah, Substack, Spotify, and Applecast.
Yeah. So if you're listening now, please let us know how the audio quality is, if you enjoy listening to it rather than just watching it live. Tobias says DevOps is not about having everybody in the team have all the skills, but having all the skills in the team needed to ideate, build, and run the system. That's a great way of describing it. And then working together in the team and making sure that the combination of diverse skills in the team leads to the best possible solution. I like this definition. Where did I read this? I think in implementing lean software development, it's this idea of having a complete team. So rather than having specialists on the team that have certain skills, and then you need, a full stack developer. I think this is very much a catchphrase for, I want you to be able to do everything, everything DevOps related. It's this idea that there is a skill, let's say, landscape that the team needs to be complete, right? Like the team builds software, designs software, develops software, talks to customers, deploys software, maintains the software, runs the software, and all of the skills needed to run all of which I just described. If you manage to get all of that into a single team, that would be, let's say, a good, healthy DevOps culture. The contrast being that there is something that the team does and something that the team doesn't do that they hand off to somebody. So I might say the team might be doing software architecture, software engineering, but they don't do testing. That they hand off. That would be, let's say, an immature and unhealthy way of structuring your full vertical DevOps processes, principles. What would you add here, Adrian? What do you see the most in small and medium businesses? What I see often is just this: is QA, SysOps, cloud architecture.
Yeah, so what I want to dig a little bit into is the idea of DevOps versus platform engineering, because this is some topic which is a little bit made up, in my opinion, just to have a new reason to sell platforms.
Yes,
because they say that so when you read Accelerate, when you read the DORA report, the state of DevOps, then you read about that actually DevOps helps you to mitigate burnout effects or depression effects, negative effects. And this is what I actually learned as well. So I experienced that, my teams experienced that. And when you take a look at LinkedIn, many people say that you have DevOps burnout. So basically DevOps leads to burnout for the developers because they, for example, need to handle in order to deploy their, let's say, little Next.js application, they need to fiddle around with AWS and no one has to do about that. So and this is the reason why they burn out.
Yes.
So imagine when someone is, providing you a self-service platform as a service solution. This is not the opposite of DevOps. So this is just, for example, when we define DevOps again, DevOps does not mean that you are, as a requirement, that you really need to say, you need to take care of your infrastructure. So you need to take care of the process. So for example, in mobile app development, you don't have infrastructure, so still you can do a DevOps approach there. And this is the same with web. For example, if someone provides you a platform, you can use it and still practice DevOps. The idea is still that you are responsible for that. If you have a clear contract with some form of platform as a service idea, which you get from providers, from service providers, no matter what, then you still can practice DevOps, because the idea is to have continuous integration, continuous delivery, and a product-orientated, goal-orientated mindset for the team, and still you can practice that. And this is what I just wanted to say up front, that we, disconnect a little bit from the idea of infrastructure somewhere, because DevOps and infrastructure is often combined, because many teams are thrown into the DevOps idea and suddenly are confronted with Kubernetes. So this is basically what happens.
I hate that conflation. Like, that is so oversimplified, and it just completely misses the mark.
But I read that every time when DevOps is coming up, and this is definitely nothing to do with so you can execute DevOps without having Kubernetes somewhere. So it's
if possible. I enter DevOps into Google, let me try that real quick. So incognito DevOps. The first thing I get is DevOps Days Ljubljana, DevOps Engineer, DevOps Meeting, DevOps Azure, DevOps AWS, DevOps Tools, DevOps Roadmap.
Exactly.
Right, so I am getting all the wrong things on DevOps, right? So it's clear that it's not clear to everybody.
And when we talk about now, and when we talk a little bit about business now, so we all do that because we're doing business. So we don't do that because we do our hobbies in DevOps.
I thought we were just influencers on LinkedIn talking smack. Wait, before we go into business, a comment from Brian. I broaden it more. Few products are developed by a single team. That's a very good observation. There's an entire value stream that needs to be improved, and if you only look at it from the perspective of a single team, we'll miss the forest. It's a very good point, because sometimes you would say, "Oh, I need so many people to make it feature complete, skill complete, that the team becomes so large that the unit that is skill complete, I then need to split up into teams that are not skill complete individually, so that there's a large unit that together monotasks on a product." But it's too large. It's more than 8 people. It's more than, usually you have this sort of breakdown, this pizza effect at like somewhere around 13, 14 people. Like a business that you run under 14 people, you can run easily lean, one singular focus. Once you hire the 15th person, departments start, something just magically happens, and
it's some form of critical mass, actually.
Yeah, it's a critical mass, and then teams start forming, and then it's just, there's this no man's land between 15 and 50 people, where it's like, are we a department? Are we a team? How do we do this times 2? How do we split this team apart? Is it still the same team? Is it now different? Are we reporting to the same person? So
I just want to say something about the comment we just see. Not business. Let's postpone that. At WebBar, we have actually one large team working on several projects or products.
How large is?
6 developers.
Good.
Full time. Okay. And we are working on several products, and basically all of them are working the same. They are all based on the idea of continuous integration, continuous delivery. They all have the same platform, the same mechanics, the same methodology, which means that sometimes you don't have, let's say, the idea of monotasking is not always given, to be honest, but it is like you can quickly switch between things, because our business is not one product. Our business is several products. So basically product software as a service we do for several clients.
That's Brian's next comment. That's Brian's next comment, actually. It's like have each team skill complete if possible and split by product domains, right? So as you're just describing.
Yeah. And sometimes you have specific problems, challenges to solve, and you assemble some kind of mini teams. It's like you just say, you two do this now together, and this can be monotasking then again. Just get it complete while another team, and sometimes larger things coming together, and we are all coming together and swarm a problem. And but the idea is that this team is able to do from everything from briefing to the form of, let's say, QA on production. So there's everything in between. There's no one else necessary outside of the team to deliver. And this is very important for us, and that works quite well. Camilla in the audience is part of that team, and this is what she basically described with her comment in a one-liner. And yes, so I can align to that. So it's true. DevOps is not about a single team doing one product. So it's basically one single team working on the entire, let's say, business portfolio, which is let's say in the responsibility of that team. So that can be multiple projects.
There might be a natural symbiosis between multiple value streams. I mean, we see this now. For example, Gergely Orosz mentioned the very, let's say, high speed, the fast cadence of how OpenAI and ChatGPT, the team itself, the applied engineering at that company, how rapidly they build. And to an outside observer, it looks like they're monotasking and they're deploying a big feature once, every month. And Gergely sort of investigated a little bit on what that looks like, had an interview with head of engineering over there, and had some interesting findings. They have a similar structure. There are multiple products. I would say 3 main products. ChatGPT, the main product to the masses, the premium, the plus version of it, and then the enterprise version of it. So there are different demographics of users who are using it, but it's similar language models, but then they are specialized for use cases, right? So all 3 product teams have the same skills copied and duplicated essentially, but they are catering to completely different target demographics, psychographics, different scales of enterprises, and different needs. Enterprises might value privacy much more than they do latency, or they might value being able to customize the LLM to their own needs. And that is a good example of them having a complete team, multiple of them, and focusing them on not even on the product, on the product owner, on the business person who's running a project, but on the customer demographics, right? So you have a very specific niche target audience that you're selling to, and they require a completely different kind of nurture than something else. Because usually how a more traditional company, especially a startup in a small or medium business, might be set up is they might have different teams, different departments, specialized based on skill. And then in order to get something that is a feature complete team is never formed. They have feature complete processes where they hand off from one department to the other, communicating that this is a project team, but they are never working on the same project at the same time together in the same room. And to me, that would be the main dysfunction that I see often in small, medium businesses and startups, is that the team is never allowed really to get together and mold and sort of talk about the product, talk about the challenges, and they get stuck in the delivery pipeline.
Yeah.
Right. So it's using this delivery pipeline as an abstraction for handing off things and doing sort of, bad waterfall, essentially, waterfall without big design up front. And then they call that fall agile or something. Like we're doing agile, we're doing Scrum, but our own way. And I see that often in small.
We're doing agile because we don't plan.
Not again. No. Not on this. Not today. Not today. I want to have a no estimate
next topic.
stream.
Yeah,
I want to have a no estimate stream on purpose. And I think we should get Brian on here on stage at some point. We had some few more responses. Subodh Kumar. It's culture where dev and ops team work for a common goal. I think that's a good generalization for it if you're explaining it to a non-technical person. Adrian, what do you think?
So it's actually what we've said in the beginning a little bit different. It's a culture. So first of all, you need to see that as a culture, and common goal is very important. So actually, this is a very good description, very high level description of it. I remember Jonathan Hall the first time writing that on LinkedIn. I remembered that term, and that was it's just very right. So everyone in the team needs to understand and live it, which is then a culture. You need when let's say you have let's say 5 developers in the team, and 3 are living it and 2 are don't. That basically do not do that. So what happens then is you will never get into a flow, and you basically are not able to do something like continuous delivery then, because it is only partially working. So let's say when 3 people working, let's say pipeline is green, you have everything inside, you own the entire process, and then suddenly something went up, it's red, and no one knows why, because someone is just tunneling and sitting in his corner and doing his thing and is going home and give something about that. And this is then simply not working. So you need to cultivate the culture that everyone feels the urge to follow the common goal, and must say, okay, I am done when I'm actually done with the definition of done, or fulfilling the definition of done. And this is a cultural aspect. And then, later comes the specifics about your team in DevOps. But the culture is what every DevOps team have in common, I think.
We have that everyone has. I like that you use that metaphor of that developer sitting in a corner, sort of working on something in isolation. Because generally, what I see in small businesses, like less than 100 engineers, and Christian Torescu, the joint collaboration area between developers and operational, and all the automation within small business equals light ops and medium dev, or the opposite. DevOps automation will help when it's in place. I like this take because I see this often where if you're not doing DevOps end to end, right? So that's our third topic for today. This idea of end to end responsibility. You rob the team's ability to celebrate, right? So if I'm not involved in the end to end delivery pipeline, that means that either I am. What does it mean, by the way? As a developer, I'm in the middle. As a designer, I'm at the beginning. As a graphical designer, because I'm doing the UX, I'm doing the demo, I'm doing the pitch deck. And then as let's say a sysops, a DevOps engineer, what you would call a person who is dealing with the CI/CD pipeline, or just the servers, or a cloud engineer, or a site reliability engineer, they're at the end of one delivery cycle, right? So if you're not part of the entire cycle, you might only be doing deployment, but you have no idea what you're deploying. You might only be doing development, but you have no idea what it looks like when it's deployed, and you have no idea what it looks like when it's being designed. And if you're only at the beginning as a designer, you might design it, but you have no idea whether it will be implemented according to the design. Or if developers will sort of go their own way and decide that, hey, you sort of designed way too far in advance and you speculated a lot. We had to iron out some details, and we changed a lot of the original plan.
This is very bad for the feedback cycle, actually.
It's very bad for the feedback cycle, because then you rob such developers from being able to celebrate, from getting feedback that, oh yeah, we got it. Or no, we're slightly off the mark. We need to adapt. We need to pivot some idea here. This feature needs to go. This feature needs to pivot. Those two features where we thought they were two completely separate markets, actually individually they don't mean anything. But if you put them together, there's a niche market that really wants this, right? And that's usually a pivot that can be really useful if you take the feedback seriously. If you don't have end-to-end responsibility across the entire pipeline, which means you're doing handoffs or handbacks, then the engineer just goes to work and goes home at 5 p.m. and they just tick a box. Like, did I do a handoff today? Yes, I handed off this code today. Did you do a handback? It's like somebody reviewed my code and rejected it. I fixed it. It's a very boring way of working, right? So it robs you of the fulfillment, because it's still intense. It can still be a stressful workplace, but then it really robs you of that fulfilling feeling of, yeah, we actually got it right. Like we're successful on the market, and the customers are really happy, and they're prepared to invest even more with us: time, attention, money, subscriptions, whatever it is, data. They might be sharing a lot more of their user base with us if you're a SaaS company, or more data, or more intensity, or more, maybe we have an exclusive contract with them. It's like, yeah, we're doing, I'm using StreamYard, for example. I'm really happy with StreamYard. And if they ask for feedback, every major button press that I do, they ask for feedback. Hey, it's like, did you have a good session? Like, did you enjoy it? That's really important. That's the sort of end-to-end idea of the person who's developing, the person who's designing, the person who's deploying. They're asking for feedback, not feedback on some weird survey that the PO does in isolation with some agency, but feedback directly to the customers. It's part of the development cycle. And I see this is where a lot of, let's say, I don't even know how to call them. Less mature. I don't think that's a fair way of putting it. But that's a small companies that don't do like full holistic DevOps, where there isn't a DevOps culture, a rich engineering culture. It's just project management.
Yeah, I've wrote a lot about how to get a mature team. I'm a big fan of a mature team. So let's imagine that you are a software developer, and we had that with code reviews already.
Yeah.
When you just push your changes, because in a ticket it says you should do this and that, and you push this and that, and you go home. You're not caring about what happens after deploy, what happens with this change. Then you are disconnected from that. So you will never ever get to the point where you actually develop a mature way of thinking about that, because before you are not part of the entire development process. You are only responsible for, let's say, the programming part of a specific component, for example.
Yes.
But you don't develop this mature idea of responsibility, of ownership of the entire application, of the entire outcome, of the entire flow, which in the end determines if this business unit, if this team, if the company is successful. So you don't take part, you don't take part of the control and faith of your company, actually, which is not good. This is not a sign of maturity. Just wanted to say that.
Exactly. So in the Westrom's form of organizations, this is actually the difference between the generative organization and the bureaucratic one. So that this idea that a bureaucratic organization would be driven by rules. So the rules are every day you need to push, you need to push your code before you go home, right? So the rule is you need to hand off your bureaucracy to the next person in the pipeline, right? So that this is a handoff based culture. Whereas a generative culture would be collaborating, so that they know that I don't need to rush the push because nobody benefits from the push. The only benefit is getting something in the hands of the users before end of day, so I can still talk to them if possible. If I can't talk to them today, then I should make it my priority to get something to them in a context where I am capable of having a conversation with them, even if it's an asynchronous digital conversation, and respond to their feedback. And in small, medium businesses, the biggest symptom that I see about this, especially, and Brian mentions, that it's addictive to get this kind of feedback, and I agree. Getting positive feedback is really addictive. It's like, yes, we're doing a good job.
I would even say you feel shallow when you don't get feedback anymore.
Yeah,
you develop insecurity when you suddenly don't get anything anymore from the outside. Definitely, I can agree.
Because wait, I'm just gonna read out what's on screen. I will ask you, on what time does a backend person and DevOps team do need communication with the other person, and on what situations not? I'm trying to create interfaces where the people on the backend doesn't need to talk to the customer side. I hope this is very good to let backend and UX especially talk together, because they're different thinkings. I think, for the most part, if the point of the backend developer not talking to the customer is that they don't have to do it synchronously, I think that's okay. That might be, that's what NPS is, Net Promoter Score. It's like, I don't want to talk to everybody individually. I just want to send them a NPS survey, and then we sort of aggregate that, and then we imagine we've spoken to our audience in aggregate. That's okay. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is when there's this, let's say, appointment of a person who says, oh, I represent the customers, and I will pretend I know what the customer wants. And then the developers have this sort of weird fake role play with this person. This might be a product owner, where they say, as a customer, would you like this? Would you pay money for this? And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, build it, and maybe they'll come. So, that way of doing handoffs is, I don't think it's practical. It's way too speculative. Like, why would you speculate if you have hard data? Because
I want to add something. So we work with another company together, and they have in their form of DevOps team a UX designer implemented. So in the end of the comment was about the communication between devs and UX, and DevOps can include UX. So there's no reason why UX shouldn't be a part of that, because the UX guys are actually speaking a lot with let's say the stakeholders outside of the business,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to feedback of them early on before you start, during the development, and after the deployment. So for the feedback cycle, it's always good to have multiple disciplines to translate the feedback into something that does,
It's
or
actionable.
is understood by the common understanding of the team,
Yeah.
and this is very important in my opinion.
There's nothing worse than no feedback.
Mhm.
I see a lot of decisions made in smaller, non-data driven bureaucratic cultures or intuitive cultures, ego driven cultures, where they will take lack of feedback, and a workplace that has that represents a lack of psychological safety, where people generally don't speak up and they stay silent, where they treat lack of data, lack of information as a signal to act upon. It's like, oh, nobody complained. Okay, let's continue. It's like, no. If you want to make them go away, like if they have a problem, you want to help them sort of say, no, is the product bad? Like, would you recommend it to a friend? Would you stop using it? What will make you stop using it? What will make you recommend it? It's this idea of trying to get them to open up with candor rather than with asking them to highlight problems. Because if they don't care about the product, they also won't care about giving you benevolent feedback unless they're really pissed off, right? And then you just get the detractors primarily. You won't get the promoters. And that's a really complex, art in itself about communication. And it's hard, and I get it. And the developers might not want to do that because there's a lot of irrational involvement in this type of in these types of conversations, and you have to do them in aggregate. So you have to contextualize. Okay, what does this mean? Is it just this person's opinion, or is it actually a problem with the product? Because with a lot of small, medium businesses, I see a lot of needless features being added to a product, and then a few big ones to a big whale client. I would like to get feedback from that big whale client if I was a developer, not the business analyst, the developer. If I was a designer, I would like to have feedback. If I was a site reliability engineer, I would like feedback. It's like, hey, when we have that little downtime on Saturday mornings, does that impact you negatively in some way? What's going on? Well, what could we improve? What's a common pain point?
Mm-hmm.
And the book Accelerate highlights this sort of marriage of delivery and design and development really well. So they have design and development in a box and delivery in a box. And we had well-being and burnout on yesterday's stream with Richard Donovan. It was a great stream, by the way. I love the sort of 4 people on stream sort of format. That there was something very magical about that. But it's this idea of burnout, that burnout is generally caused by bad, the deployment pain. The book talks about deployment pain, where I develop something, but then there is a non-trivial amount of effort necessary to give it to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of the DORA metrics, DevOps, the Accelerate, the book, the space metrics, and all of this DevX, sort of developer well-being, fully integrated teams, autonomous teams, end-to-end responsible teams. The whole point is that if you deal with the pain of deployment, it will allow you to develop and design a smaller increment of the product at a time. Because the natural tendency of a team, now on enterprises, this might be a little bit alleviated because there's bureaucracy, but in startups, in small engineering organizations, I see the normal tendency is if deployments are painful, we want to do them less often and deploy something bigger. And that is the root cause of all issues then with that department, is that they're hyper-optimizing efficiency on a painful process rather than making the process less painful.
Yeah, but there's another way. So yeah, I agree. I see that often, but it often comes together with the original idea. So I think it was the original idea why the recruiters try to sell you DevOps engineers, is that you have a team of 5 developers, and they have developed a deployment pane, and you basically get someone from outside who's coming once in a while and fixing your pipelines and deployment procedures, and still the team is not enabled to do that. So I've made a video about that, I think some weeks ago. And you don't build up, so you don't develop your developers to the point that they actually can handle this. So you don't include the discipline of ops, into your dev team. You have it as an outsider, helping you from time to time as a contractor. But you will never be enabled to. So you will never overcome this hurdle. You will never solve this puzzle, which is then every time a problem. So you will always be reluctant and feel some hesitancy before actually saying, okay, I merge to main now, and I make a deployment, I trigger something like that. So, and I think this is a combination of both. So, and this is basically solely, so let's say the current state, you have several developers and they are burnt out, so stressed because of the deployment. So they could learn it, but why do they not learn it? So where's the problem? Why can't they simplify the process?
Such an organization, generally, in my experience, such organizations are not agile enough, right? So agile. When I use this word, not agile enough, I don't mean that they don't have Scrum Masters or agile coaches, or they don't have certificates. What I mean is that they are not a learning organization. They don't have a process of learning, right? So they say, oh, the delivery is painful, so we will develop a large chunk and then deliver it in one go, so we only experience the pain. So they reduce the frequency of the pain by delivering less often, by delivering larger chunks. And then they say, oh, the problem is actually that we're developing too slowly because of the delivery pain, right? So the delivery pain makes us develop more slowly. They look at the pipeline as if there is this development to be done, and then delivery is instant. And if it's not instant, that's a problem with the pipeline. And then the negative impact, the negative impact of the delivery pain is that we're not developing enough. But that is actually the wrong root cause analysis. Like that is a organization that doesn't want to learn. Because generally, if you were to open up this box and dig a bit deeper, 5 whys, 6 whys maybe, it's like, why is delivering the software painful? Oh, because it's a lot of manual processes and we need these 3 people synchronized. But why do we need that? Why do these 3 people need to be present? Or because we have some gatekeeping going on, and then it's the most mature people owning their own services. It's like, but if they're required to collaborate, why do they own a service why do 3 people own 3 separate services that always has to be deployed together? Isn't that one team that should be collaborating? It's like, why are they siloed? Oh, because sometimes all 3 of them, they're the most mature people. They have 3 different parallel streams of priorities. Okay, so there's 3 different teams where the most senior person is the soloist building on that stream, and every now and then they have to come together and deploy the entire thing because this is underneath everything. It's a monolith. But why is that a good idea? Like, why did we set up the architecture for a company that way? Because it seems like whatever we do, for any product development that is urgent, we will fight our system. So there's a moment in the project where we fight our architecture, where we fight our system, where we fight our pipeline. And then they are the heroes. They are the unsung heroes who then get to be the owners of this fight. It's like, but why do we want that? Why can't we just remove the process and merge have these people sit together, work together on
heroics described in the DevOps handbook, actually.
Yeah.
And other, let's say, Phoenix Project and all this kind of stuff. You always have the brands in your company. Exactly. Saving the day, and you don't want to have that, because once the brand isn't there, your day is not safe. And I saw that as well. That let's say companies often try to fix on the wrong position. So, for example, when you have a software architecture problem, which results in a complex deployment strategy you need to apply to actually get that done, in order to fix that. So, getting some feedback about this into the dev team becomes aware of that and fix that. Instead of doing that, they're getting a quote unquote DevOps engineer setting up that complex operations, leaving them alone, and then they have this awful architecture which is hard to develop and hard to deploy. So you can't do it any worse. It is actually a nightmare to work in something like that. And I saw that often. I saw that this year alone in several consultancies, that this is actually common practiced standard, which is sad. To be honest, it's really sad.
It is traditional project management, however. If you're coming from a non-iterative, like non-agile, non-learning organization, a non-learning culture, like what Brian just said, right? So let's add another silo, right? Because we have, this is a company run by HR and the CFO. It's like, okay, what skills do we need? Oh, DevOps. Oh, we need a DevOps department. Okay, what skills do we need? We need designers. We need front-end engineers. Oh, front-end engineers are now called full stack. Okay, we need a full stack. We need a full stack guild. We need a full stack tribe. We need a full stack. And then you create these silos of specialists who, by virtue of being part of the silo rather than a product team, in order for anything meaningful to come out of this company's pipeline, you have to temporarily and very synthetically merge these people together by calling it a project. So it's not a team. It's just a bunch of specialists. And the way to get them together is to create a project. It's like, oh, I have a project here. This project will take 3 months on the roadmap. Who do I need? I need 2 DevOps, 2 potatoes, a little bit of onion, it's like you can't. It's like your manpower in the company is like your pantry, and you're cooking something, and there's a recipe. I was like, oh, for this product, I need 1 DevOps and half a DevOps. It's like those. We will have him at the beginning, at the end of the project. He will set up the pipeline, and then he'll be supporting when we deploy. So I need half a DevOps person, 1.5 manager, and 2 backend engineers. One of them should know a bit of front end, and 1 full stack designer. Right? So that's the sort of wishy-washiness of playing Monopoly with your talent, with your people in your company. And I see a lot of companies work like this. It's like, I have this project, who do I need? Rather than saying, I'm building this product, which people do I want to own this product? How will they operate? Like, what do they need to succeed? And it's a culture of empowerment. It's a culture of saying, I don't want to micromanage this ad infinitum. I want to define the project. I want to hire a team that will own this product. Once it's no longer a project, the project might be the initial market testing, but then if it's viable, we will call this a product, and we'll absorb it into our how did you call it, our portfolio of products, right? So if our company prides itself with 3 products, well, god damn it, there should be 3 product teams in that company, right? Not an engineering department and something else around it, right? For 3 products, we should have 3 product teams, because then I know which product team is working on which product. And then they should be fully vertically integrated, skill complete, and essentially do DevOps. Do DevOps in the mature meaning of the word, meaning they do ops, they do their pipeline, they do maintenance, they do on-call, they do Sunday morning at 3 a.m., they do design, they do UX, they do feedback, and they manage themselves. This was the second agenda. And what do you think about this? This discrepancy, how is it in your company? Self-management. Like, I would assume that you, as the CTO, who's also a business owner, would hate micromanaging engineers.
Yeah, micromanagement is the opposite of ownership. Let's say, who's the owner in a micromanaged environment? It is the boss person who basically holds the strings. The master of puppets. And
I need to open this link that Brian just linked.
Exactly. And the other thing is that you say, okay, you have a task, you have a goal, your common goal in your team, and this is basically your contract. The team does have a contract with the company, and the contract can be take care of 1, 2, 3 products, and this is your job. You have a budget for this. You have you have a specific time frame for this, and you need to provide feedback, and there comes some other ideas inside that. For example, that I personally think that the business should be, let's say, a little bit of flexible there as well. So for example, if the team provides enough feedback, ongoing feedback back to the business, then the business should be able to adapt as well. For example, the timeline a little bit, the budget a little bit, in order to get things done, but leave the team enough autonomy to create the best possible outcome, because that is long-term success.
Yeah. And even that wording that you just used will make me wary. Like, leave the team autonomy. Like, if I leave autonomy to somebody, it implies they're not autonomous. They are autonomous by virtue of my benevolence. Like, I allow them to be autonomous. But that's not sovereignty. If I allow you to be autonomous, then you're not autonomous.
No, you need to create the framework as a business owner for this.
Exactly. So we need to create boundaries, not autonomy. So I don't give you autonomy. I define a boundary, and I'm autonomous on my side of the boundary, and you're autonomous on your side of the boundary, right? So, and a lot of business owners, especially in small companies, don't want to let go. They don't want to have a boundary where they say, from this line onward, you make product decisions, not me. And that's really hard for a lot of business owners, especially when the business owner is a CPO type. Sort of, they handle product. The product is their baby, and the company grows, and they need to become strategic rather than tactical, and they sort of don't want to let go of their baby. It's like,
that's one. Actually, when we saw that, it always ended in a toxic environment, actually, because on some point, those two sides clash into each other. And yes, we had that this year with another call. Let's go ahead then.
I opened this link by Brian, and I thought it was about safe, but it's actually satire. It's satire. So the press gang is, in the press gang ceremony, each feature captain chooses 2 to 20 code engineers from the coding pool to deliver the next feature. This ensures each code engineer is allowed to work on new and interesting things and that are fully utilized. Right. So in the I love this. This is a great website. Convoy alignment. This is a 5-day meeting held every 6 weeks for planning the next 8 quarters of features to ensure the critical paths are aligned. See the agenda for details. I love it. I mean, in a way it's sad, because I know companies that work like this, and it's really hard to convince them to do something else. But even the fact that I have to do some convincing, they bring me in as a coach, and the fact that I have to do convincing, then it's what should we do to go faster and be more reliable. And just provide boundaries, like define this team works on this and definitely does not work on that, and then let them prioritize. Just tell them what are the priorities and let them follow the priorities. It's Brian has cars. we gotta get Brian on the show and talk about safe. I mean, we have to get that on the bucket list. So this idea of management can become very toxic if it's pervasive.
Yeah.
Right. So if a manager manages resource utilization, right? So if the because the ideal, ironically, and I think this has to do with the image that engineers present, is that ideally your engineering department, your product engineering department, that also does delivery. So it's a fully mature DevOps culture. Ideally, you would want it to be a black box where you put money in and it gets you more money out. You put $1 million in, $1,200,000 come out. So then what you want to maximize is how much money you put in. That's a profit center. And it will have a natural ceiling where you start getting diminishing returns on what they can actually get out of that, scaling. And that's how VC-funded startups even want to operate. They want to create this black box and then just use it as a money-making machine. The issue is that oftentimes, by virtue of optimizing the pipeline too soon, managers have this tendency of breaking up the process to match their Gantt chart of the roadmap. So we're going to do a little bit of design, and then we'll do a little bit of engineering, and then while we're doing that, we're designing the next thing, and then there's this pipeline thing going on. And this already creates a culture of handoffs, right? And you can see, and you in chat, you can check if this is happening at your company. If you're often finding yourself wanting to be involved in the project sooner, right? So a fully mature DevOps culture means that when a project starts, the project starts. The project doesn't start when it has been planned for 4 months, and then we start programming. That's not mature DevOps. That's the opposite of it. Like, we can still do big design up front, but it's the engineers doing big design up front by virtue of building prototypes and figuring out what to design and what not to design, by testing their designs. Like that's commonplace. I mean, that's how rockets are made. Like, you build things in isolation and you build them in test harnesses. You test the modules individually, and then you have one shot at it. So you better make sure it's really designed well, and you design it well by virtue of isolating them and testing them very well. But software engineers and managers of software projects generally think that this means, we do no planning, no estimation. We start when it makes sense, and it's done when it makes sense. And that's silly. That's like, you can't run a business like that. That does not provide good, benevolent, predictable business outcomes. And it's just burning money, because it doesn't solve the problems. It doesn't provide good feedback loops. It doesn't solve this problem of accidentally working on something too large, like where the release cadence is too large, accidentally, unplanned, delay. It doesn't solve the problem of the delivery pain. It doesn't solve the problem of being able to get the team together in a benevolent way, collaborate at the same time rather than doing handoffs. And then, if you don't solve any of these problems, you just see challenges, and you will be foolish not to address those challenges, and then you solve the challenges with the wrong solutions. And generally, that would mean, there's disconnect between testing and developers. Okay, let's have a QA process. There's disconnect between the designer and the front-end engineer. Okay, let's have a handoff and a design review. And then they have all these like little gatekeeping processes in place, because they think that actually addresses the symptoms of this culture, but doesn't improve the culture, because it's not, the root cause is that such a culture is not a learning organization. It is an organization trying to optimize throughput, right? So they want to optimize the maximum capacity of the pipeline, and guess what happens? That pipeline will always run at the maximum capacity, leading to burnout, meaning that whatever is running really fast through this pipeline is of very low quality. And it's very low. Very low.
But this is then we're getting back to the point where we said you pass autonomy, and you shouldn't pass autonomy, because you can, pull autonomy away again. So this is when you say, "Hey team, let's start," and when it's not going fast enough for you as a business owner, you just pull away again and try to oversteer, and this is then a very toxic thing which can happen. And you shouldn't do that, because let's say you say pipeline, when the pipeline is not running fast enough, we don't mean the CI/CD pipeline now. It is the pipeline of the life cycle, getting out new values to the client. Then it's actually still the problem of the DevOps team. Let's say DevOps team. It's of the development team. Everyone inside that team. So it does make more sense that the business person that joins the team for a while to get that fixed together, but don't oversteer it by an outside view. So this is very important, because business does most of the times not have the clue what actually happens when they order specific things or oversteer specific things. The outcome is, in most of the cases, a toxic environment and a long-term problem you put into place. And this can then lead to a burnout situation, because you are, as a team, out of control. This is what Richard Donovan yesterday said on the well-being stream. Then you are actually out of control, because it is not in your hands anymore. So there is a problem, that, but you need to do what others tell you in order to fix that. But you see that you're actually not fixing it. Because this is what you should.
And it can also create negative feedback loops that regardless of what you do, the problem will just seem permanent.
Yeah.
And then you'll rob the team of being able to celebrate, because if I push my feature, I never see it being, I never see the benevolent outcome celebrated by the user. I just see my pipeline being full, and I'm always late, and I have always too much things to do, and the priorities always change, and the requirements are always wrong, and I just constantly run in this jungle. And especially junior engineers, they find themselves blaming management for that. Where in reality, that's actually a DevOps problem. It's like, why are we doing business requirement handoffs without testing them? I often, and the sort of, I'm often the contrarian in these kinds of stakeholder meetings, and I'm asking, well, you just defined a lot of business requirements. Like, how would we test if they're the right requirements for our users right now? Because they might be the right requirements, but maybe the timing is not okay. Maybe it's not the right time to go to market with all of these things at the same time. How would we test any of those assumptions? And an ego-driven organization would generally say, no, the requirements are right. The requirements are right. This has to be done. I know what the users want. And Brian also said, the requirements are always wrong. The more work we plan on delivering before getting feedback, the more wrong we are. And this has to do with the delivery plane. Right? So product design and product development benefits from short feedback cycles. That's the whole point of, the first part. I have DevOps, I have Accelerate, the book open to me. The very first part of any kind of good, mature DevOps organization is getting the culture of delivery really low cadence. Continuous development, continuous delivery, continuous integration, trunk-based development. Please, for the love of God, do TDD. Not because you hate it, or because Kent Beck told you so, or because influencers told you that you're a poo-poo developer if you're not using TDD. But I would ask everybody, just get something in your process that gives you extremely quick feedback that improves your confidence. Now, usually, that used to be a compiler. Now, back in the 90s, a compiler was enough for that. A compiler was something where you didn't have to run it on the mainframe. You could just compile it and see, if it compiled, it meant that the program could be solved in a mathematic way. It could be proven correct. And to a large degree, if you look at the NASA specs for how they write software for their rockets, they want they have very strict rules of what programming paradigms are allowed to be used, because they want each program to be proven correct, right? So they want it to have they don't want it to use heap memory. They want it to use very predictable outcomes. It should never throw an exception, right? So each scenario has to be accounted for, so that the program can just be, by virtue of static analysis, be proven correct. And we don't do that anymore. Dynamic languages rule the web. JavaScript, TypeScript, even PHP, C# has dynamic components. Rust has dynamic components. Go is getting a little bit back to the roots, which I really like. But again, it's coming back to this idea that the compiler is not enough anymore. The feedback from the compiler is not enough. We need to write a program that gives us feedback, and TDD is great for that. But in the same vein, if that is the tactical, we also need to create the machine that tests for us our assumptions, that give us feedback as well about our strategy, and that's DevOps. DevOps is about creating a process that forces us to get feedback real quick. Right? So you start work by saying, I am building a feature. I define this as successful, this as not successful, and I am capable of measuring that to some degree on a spectrum. Right? That's really important. And you can't do that if you don't. Now, you can do that in two ways. You can measure the product delivery metrics of, okay, once we were done, how long did it take to get to the user? Like, was it a clumsy process, or was it seamless and instantaneous? For example, this might be a huge problem for app development on mobile. It's like, okay, when you have an update, how long does it need to reach the user? Because the user also needs to decide that they will update the app, right? So how do we, there's something very socio-technical going on here. It's like we need to inspire them to update the app. Should we force them? Should we ask them? Do they have a choice? At what point do they no longer have a choice? And then that becomes, again, part of DevOps. And then there's the other side, which is measuring the product design, the development cycle of it. It's like, did we develop this correctly? Did we put the button where it should be? Do they expect the button to be synchronous or asynchronous? Like when they hit the button, do they expect that to actually have happened? Or is that just a guarantee that if it will happen at some point in the future and they need to come back in like 5 minutes? I see this often with reports on Stripe, where I say, hey, I want to report for this. And I say, this one, please. And they tell me, oh, it'll take some few minutes. We will email you when it's ready. And I'm like, okay, but now or in half an hour? And I had this problem today with like one of the services I'm using had 2-factor authentication, and it's not sending me an SMS.
Yes, this is common.
Right? And it's
quite
like
annoying.
And it's like, well, did I do my, and that's a DevOps problem. Like I would want the team to be fully empowered to do that. I wouldn't want a customer to complain about it, and then the engineering team says, oh, that's one of our outside, we don't have hand off to that other department. Because that's what I hate as well about customer support. I call somebody and they say, oh, that's not my thing. Let me wire you to that other person. And then I have to explain it to them again. Oh, that's not my thing. I think you should talk to somebody technical. And they wire me over to somebody. And I have to explain it to them again. And ironically, a lot of businesses work like that. A lot of software organizations operate like that. It's like, hey, can we add this thing here? Can we run this experiment? Oh, I don't know. You should maybe talk to engineering. It's like, hey, engineering, can we do this? Okay. What? No, we're busy. We're in a hurry. Okay, we can't do it, but please remove one of these 7 projects. And this person has no idea what those 7 projects are, because they have a different pain. They have a pain of being overcommitted. They have too many things in the pipeline.
I would say we should maybe, because we are through the agenda, but we still have plenty of time. I would first of all ask the audience about topics we should discuss in your opinion. I would have one for us now is I get that asked quite often, how to actually implement DevOps. So I'm not a fan of this question, because you don't really implement DevOps. You cultivate DevOps. This is how I put it. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how to get to the point to have such an environment, a culture, a team, however you want to call it now. So because I think I'm not even sure how many of the listeners actually, or the audience is really in a DevOps team by the definition we've just had today.
The wider.
Exactly. So I guess that most of the people who actually watch this are not in 100% of that kind of environment, because most teams I met are traditional software teams and doing somehow this stuff to deploy, and then it's good, and as soon as they deploy, they don't hear back until someone is yelling at them or giving you tickets. So this is actually something I see often. So how do you get from this traditional process to let's say a DevOps culture, so where you have this end-to-end responsibility baked into the team culture?
I would say, because I deal with this a lot, I would say, regardless of your position, what you are, and please don't self-label as, oh, this is not my thing because I'm a junior, or this is not my thing because I'm an engineer, or this is not my thing because X or Y. You're part of the same company. It's your problem. So just, somebody requested it. Hopefully it has market demand. So hopefully a real person has requested this feature. It's not just somebody's wish list, which sadly, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes what you're working on is irrelevant and unnecessary. And that's just the reality. But my practical advice would be, when you find yourself that you have a hand-off process in your pipeline, resist the urge to stop at the handoff.
Mm-hmm.
When you hand off, rather than handing off and then continuing with a new thing, because you probably have a backlog and you probably have tickets, and you hand off and you start the next ticket. When you hand off, rather than handing it off, ask for the person to come to you.
Yep.
And then collaborate with them rather than handing it off. It's like, I have it ready. Now, rather than handing it off, please, let's schedule a meeting and let's meet and let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then help them.
Let's get it done.
Let's get it done. Yes.
Right? It's done when, for example, let's say a very simple thing. This is what most people have. You have someone who's creating a ticket for the dev team. The developer takes this ticket, and the simplest thing you can do is actually go with that ticket. When you have it done, when you have deployed, for example, on a staging system, production, it doesn't matter. Feature flags, it doesn't matter. Go to that person and ask for a short meeting. Can it come to my desk? Can we use Teams, Slack, or whatever to talk about that?
Even if
get
it's
direct, straight feedback. We did that alone.
Loom. Yeah.
We did that alone today. When sometimes I attend those meetings, 3 or 4 times today. And every time you do that, another great side effect happens. The stress level on all levels is reduced because you have delivered something. Because after we had that 2 streams or 3 streams ago, that 100% problem. In most companies, you have a delivery of 0 and 100. It's binary. It's nothing in between.
Not done.
Exactly. But if you have a work of week, and you are late, let's say 3 days, then you have 10 days. Oh no, let's say. Then you have 8 days actually. Then you have 8 days where people or your business stakeholders, your clients think nothing is done. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
And what you want to achieve is on each day, talk about what you've done. Get feedback, what you can improve. Then there is so much value every day that actually it feels faster, even if it takes longer. It feels faster, and the outcome will be better because you have feedback from day one and not 3 days late. And then you start again because you are not ready. And the people say after 8 days, there's not something we need to improve still because you have forgot something. And then you have 3 more days, which is more costly, more stressful. And the notion of the IT team is not delivering. And
then you feel like the black sheep.
Exactly.
And then you're constantly late. And then when you are done, you don't celebrate because you are done and late. Right? So it creates this culture where being done is stigmatized because being done is not good enough. Being done on time is good enough, maybe good enough. Because what the business really wants is they just want you to figure out the core outcome of what they want and deliver it without spending the entire budget. Like that's the ideal outcome. And most software, most non-elite performing software cultures, software organizations are way below that standard. They will define a budget, they will define a timeline, and then they will deliver over budget and late most of the time. And that can be avoided. But it requires a very holistic approach to delivery. In a way, the Ritz chain of hotels is notorious for they have coined the term customer obsession. And they work like this. They're not about software. They're not a software company. They do hotels. But they have this kind of process. They have DevOps. I don't know what they call it, but they are a DevOps culture where they say, okay, it's like everybody is part of a value stream. Not everybody's capturing revenue, but everybody's part of the same value stream. The value stream being that we have a guest and we want them to have an amazing experience that they will want to come back for and recommend to their friends. And they have a lot of different ways of how to nurture customer obsession. They might have budgets for solving any problems. They might have protocols for what to do with, if when somebody finds a problem, they make it their responsibility to fix the problem. There is no hands-offs. There is no, I will connect you with. No. I am empowered. Like regardless of my station, I am empowered to solve any problem for the guest. And it is my responsibility to make sure that the problem of the guest who alerted me has been fixed. And that creates that is what customer obsession is. It's when a customer complains that they can't log in, if a developer catches that complaint, they don't triage, they don't hand it off to somebody, they go and fix it. That's DevOps. That's pure DevOps. You have a big client who's very important to you. They have a problem, and you don't ask for permission.
Make it your business problem as a developer.
You make their problem your problem. You own their problem. You say, okay, you have a problem, I'm owning it. You have a problem with our system, you have a bad experience with our system, okay, I'm owning it. Or my team is owning it. Or my squad is owning it. Like, depending on, there will be a subdivision of some kind, right? So the more complex the value stream pipeline, the more subdivisions it will have. But it's important that everybody can make the decision of, oh, we need to fix this. So that there isn't this constant centralized authority for priorities, because as the organization grows, the person who's prioritizing will always be biased towards prioritizing things that they find important. But if they haven't built the system, and more importantly, if the person defining priorities did not create the pipeline, which defines the feedback loop, then they don't have any feedback data. They're outside of the loop, which is why CEOs, CPOs, and CTOs should generally never make these kinds of decisions. They should not be involved because they are not inside the loop that is exposed to all the feedback. Now, ironically, in most companies, that feedback loop is exposed and captured and siloed to customer care. And that's very sad.
Yeah,
that is a gold mine. Like that is just pure.
You have that even in very small companies where you have some form of person who's basically owning the phone. And have, there's so much feedback which this person is not able to translate to the developers that you miss a lot of business opportunity there. I can speak about that.
Yeah. Brian also mentions, like, if you're not studying the business as hard as you're studying how to develop better, you're failing as a software engineer. Yeah, and this is, I keep going back to this quote on one of the Amazon stakeholder meetings where I think it was one of the press releases for the yearly reports that they do as a public company, and they said that one of the most important things is product engineering and business understanding in one skull. Right? So it should be everybody's job to cultivate product understanding, like programming skill, they called it, and business understanding, like in one brain, like the combination of it, right? So the team won't be successful when we have a very good DevOps person and a very good full stack developer and a very good software architect and a very good machine learning specialist and it's not about the heroes, because possibly if that's your environment, it's very likely toxic because it just has a bunch of assholes who just want to dominate their particular field and have knowledge silos. The best way of building a DevOps culture is to nurture product and business understanding on the most technical, on the most exposed, on the most sort of touching the metal part of your organization. So you asked me, to be practical, what else can we do to adopt this if you're not in such a culture? Definitely follow the value stream up and down. If you get a task, if somebody gives you a task, hands you off a task, don't just accept it. Sit down with them. Negotiate with them. Try to make it go away. That is one of the first things I teach developers is negotiate. Like try to make the task go away. Test if it's really serious. Test if it's like really, important to the business, or if this is some low-hanging fruit that somebody said, oh, maybe we could add this, experiment a bit. Because a lot of times people just don't have ideas and they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel, for new product ideas. They just, dump a lot of things into the backlog and it's like, yeah, let's try a few things. I don't know what we should do next. Let's try.
Yeah, you can do experimentation, but then you should label it experimentation.
Yes.
And don't, experiments should not become permanent feature. You need to maintain and create a burden with that. Exactly. That's two different pairs of shoes.
Yeah, I would always recommend follow the person, follow the line where the requirements are coming from, and go to the source and negotiate with them, talk to them, try to understand them. That's one side. The other side is when you're handing off something, go all the way with that person. There might be another department down the line. It's like when one of the most frustrating experiences I had in one of my companies back in 2017 when DevOps, if you look at Google Trends, DevOps was sort of starting to accelerate in 2000. I mean, when the book came out, when Accelerate came out, that's when sort of DevOps started becoming popular, late 2016, 2017. Is that one of the most frustrating things that I've experienced as an engineer? I was leading a team, and then the team grew, and then the company grew, and it boomed, and then suddenly we grew the company like 5x in 8 months, and that was shocking. And then suddenly we had a site reliability engineer, a QA engineer, and everybody. And I still wanted to follow my ticket end to end. And they were like, "No, Dennis, this is now QA," and I'm like, "Yes." So I'm now here, and we will QA this together because I want to make sure. I promise this is going live. So, but it appeared that I'm micromanaging. Like to them appeared as like, "Oh, Dennis is done." And he not only handed off the ticket, but he also sat down next to me. It's like, what should I do? I mean, and I was a bit pushy because I saw the silos being created. And I was trying to push against that. But that was a frustrating. I mean, I recommend doing this, but it is a bit frustrating because you will encounter the resistance that the bad culture has established.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way around that. That you will push some buttons, you will trigger some, like it is a very irrational way of approaching transformation. And this is a natural thing that happens. And it's really important to understand that it's not personal. You as a professional pride yourself in saying, hey, I task myself with making sure that this gets delivered, that it has appropriate quality, and I want to make sure I get feedback from the customers while I still have time to act on it. So just follow the ticket through the pipeline. Like, talk to everybody who it touches. Even if you have handoffs, like coordinate with them. Like appear as if you are the owner of this thing that has to make it all the way to the pipeline to production.
Yeah.
Because
sometimes it's easy to just ask your business stakeholder, your connection, whoever is responsible for that one, is that ticket done?
Yeah.
So the ticket is not done when you hand it over. The ticket is done when everyone thinks it's done. And then you can go over, gather some feedback, and maybe you get that back some days because there is people found something which wasn't done, but at least you have, you went all the way. And this is how I can say, this is again, you reduce the stress levels, you increase the feedback. And that's actually
funny,
a good outcome.
It's funny you should say this because I saw this happening in the late 2010s, where this, I don't know what to call it. I saw this for the first time on going from Trello to Jira. And I don't know what it is, but every team that I see working with Jira, they quickly adopt this individuated definition of done. Like the ticket is not done, but the ticket is done for me because I have reassigned it to some other person.
Because then it basically disappears from your board.
Yeah, it's like I have my board. Like there is a board for the team, and there is my board.
Yeah, but this is the.
And then when I reassign it, when I reassign it to somebody, it's done for me.
No, this is definitely. This is backlog management. This is
backlog management. Yeah.
When somebody, when you are not self-serving your backlog, while you have a real backlog where you can go to as a software developer and pick your next task. Instead, some project managers are, filling up your day backlog, which is then becoming a weekly backlog and sometimes a monthly backlog because you cannot work down anymore. This is the actual thing where you try to get that ticket away from you and take the next one. So this is a problem created by, let's say, the company or the teams themselves. So this is the actual answer to your question, actually. Yeah. So we have some comments. So, but they just statements.
Go ahead. They are statements. Brian is passionately following our conversation, which I really appreciate. And Tobias had to go. So Tobias, thank you for taking the time for dedicating this part of your day to spend it with us. I really appreciate it. We are making this a regular thing from now on. So Adrian and I will be sort of pairing up with a mutual brand. We will be rebranding slightly. because right now it's our individual brands mixed together a little bit. We're doing this live. We're figuring it out as we go. So, but we are committing to having a joint stream Wednesday 4 p.m. CET and Thursday 4 p.m. CET, where either one of us or together can show up and sort of essentially regularly give you a show Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah. And you will always have, let's say, two topics a week where you can join when is, for example, more interesting for you, and then you can follow up each newsletter about that when we go into a deep dive. There is still missing a deep dive from my side regarding legacy migrations. This will come out soon.
The Strangler-Fig, the strategic side of it. Yeah,
it's very important and very connected topics actually. So let's say those topics are not really standalone. They are standalone in one sense, but for example, we had this yesterday with burnout, then the legacy migrations, then we had continuous delivery, trunk-based development, monotasking, all this kind of stuff. This goes all into the same direction. Of course, we are not talking about topics we don't know, and we have some form of biasness together, but it's actually working quite well together. And so all our topics are going into the direction of creating a great engineering culture, for the developers, for basically every level. So this is what we've said yesterday as well. It's not about that we only want to talk with the seniority of developers. We want to reach everyone, from the junior developer up to the CTO, from the strategic down to the operational part. And this is very important actually, to
how to make work suck less. Yes, essentially. Yes, that's it in a nutshell.
Because these days you have the chance to learn how to improve. So when I grew up in that business, you had some handbooks. That was it. Some manuals. There was nobody even talking about the culture, and there were years. It felt a little bit like a dark age sometimes. So there were years of no real enhancement.
There was this disconnect because a lot of people who went into this kind of web, like DevOps, they were training computer science, right? But they didn't understand the human, the socio-technical, the operational side of running a technology company. They only, it was very academic. It dealt with, and that's very good if you're dealing with low-level stuff, compilers, if you're dealing with complex data structures, and your job is essentially what everybody dreads on lead code, if that's actually your job from a research perspective. But that is very much, that is a science, right? Like that is research, that is academic. What we're doing every day, this is operational, this is entrepreneurial. We're building products.
We're doing business.
We're doing business by building products, by maintaining those products, by operating those products, by changing those products, pivoting those products, by creating, but not only that, not only do we create products, but we manage and create pipelines that create these products. And that's what DevOps is. Like, never mind building your product. You need to build the right pipeline to build your product. Right? So when somebody asks me, hey, Dennis, can we do an experiment? I'm like, okay, short or long? Because if it's a long experiment, I will build a pipeline for it.
Yeah.
I can't just willy-nilly do experiments from one week to another and then 1 year later have something amazing. I need a pipeline for that. I need to understand what is a cadence, like how am I getting feedback? How will I know? Like, well, what is the kill switch? How do I if we do experiment upon experiment upon experiment upon experiment for 6 months and then decide this is not working out, how do I kill it? How do I remove it from the code base? That has to be planned in. That has to be sprint zero. That has to be day zero. That has to be iteration zero. It has to define. I think Brian mentioned this. Iteration zero is defining the pipeline that will at least serve you for the near future, right? So if you already know it's going to take a month, step one should be defining a pipeline. And I do coach a lot of teams on this, where a lot of our conversations with the team is, well, you're fixing a bug, and you're not really fixing the bug. You're fighting the project. You're fighting the pipeline. You're fighting the architecture. You need to do that first, right? You need to have a safety net. You need to have, like you're building a house, you need scaffolding. Otherwise, somebody might die. and then lawyers come in, and then it's like, well, no more bug fixes. That's not, it's not okay. And right now, with all the, maybe I'm just over dramatizing, but with the amount of wars and conflicts that are happening, especially on the sort of European and sort of US adjacent territories, the more cybersecurity threats are, the cyber attacks that are happening regularly are directly related to the amount of conflict there is in the world. So if there is a huge war going on in Israel or in Russia or the Middle East, expect to have, a large degree of outages on that region of AWS or on those regions of your PaaS provider or your infrastructure provider, and you as a DevOps team have to take that into account. Like your pipeline needs to take that into account. It can't just be something that you hand off at the end of the project to some person that you're sort of paying part-time, that half DevOps person that you're sort of hiring part-time onto the project. Because it has to be holistic. You have to be able to say, yes, we are taking full responsibility for this. Because there's nothing worse when somebody says, oh, I want to log into my system and my two-factor authentication doesn't work.
Yeah, but this is a good thing. So we had this idea of deploying on Friday. This will be actually a topic with Tobias. He was just in the audience. We will have him on stream about this as well. And Friday. Friday is, for example, in Germany, last day of the week. So then you have Saturday and Sunday is free time. But this is still the area of responsibility of the DevOps culture, of the DevOps team, because you need to make sure that your application is fulfilling the SLA on those 2 days, because no one else will do. So there is no, let's say, ops person there in a night shift sitting there and, watching some metrics or something like that. So of course, if there can be an outage, then you need to react. You need to have some measurement and alerting for that. But you need to make sure in first place that this will work out. So you need to adapt your whole way of working, whole way of deploying things, running things, take that into account. So the whole architecture around your deployment is very important in this case.
And this attitude towards on-call, like if you get woken up Saturday morning at 3 a.m., that is part of the product. So if you're responsible for that, that means that if waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday sucks, then it sucks for you by choice. And the only way to fix this problem is if you actually say, no, I'm going to go fix this problem without asking for permission on a work day. Because it's me waking up Saturday morning at 3 a.m. and I know it will suck unless I create some tooling, some automation to help me figure out things in that part of the day.
And this mindset will lead to skills.
Yes.
When you've practiced that for years, you get to the point where you're a very, very skillful person.
Yes.
Unlike people who haven't done that, who say, well, others will take care of that. Let's say those things I don't want to do. I feel a lot of resistance. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
So I find reasons to not work into those things. Then you don't build up skills to actually be able to mitigate those problems before they actually happen.
Yeah, and one of the worst things that can happen to you is that when you're so overwhelmed and so burnt out and so stressed out that there's a problem, but you don't fix it because there's a huge fight over what the priorities are, because every pipeline is, overfilled, and then you don't need you know what needs to be done, but you don't do it. Because you don't do it because you are in this mindset of, I'm not allowed to work on this because I need to ask for permission. But that's your choice. Like you as the professional, people ask me, what is DevOps? It is not about, what is a senior engineer versus a junior engineer. They could have the same programming skill, but the senior engineer is a much more mature professional. It has nothing to do with them being a better engineer, but they're a better professional. They do more. They say no to more things, and they do more things by themselves without asking for permission. That's the whole point. The the light at the end of the tunnel is not some perfect understand. It isn't being ChatGPT. ChatGPT, by virtue of it just being a benign library, is a junior engineer. Because ChatGPT won't do anything without asking for permission. They won't do anything without being prompted. That's why it won't bring on a significant revolution, because most engineers in the industry are junior, and there's no difference between them doing themselves and prompting ChatGPT. Because it's about thinking, it's about making decisions. That's the hard part of software, about product engineering and about DevOps. It's not about typing code. It's not about pushing out things to production. It's about the real efficacy of your decision-making process as an individual, without deferring, without needlessly giving your power away, and then having self-imposed imposter syndrome because you have elevated somebody who is a non-technical person, who is outside the feedback loop, who is outside the product delivery pipeline, who is outside the product development pipeline, and then you ask them, hey, should I work on this? And what will they ask? Their number one question when you ask them, how long will this take? Because how else should they make the decision? Right? Like, they don't understand anything other than the calendar. Because you're the expert. But
what you've just said about juniors is very important, because we probably have a lot of juniors listening to that over the next days, is that I often said that I have a problem with the term junior developer, because junior software developer, you are actually not a software developer yet. You are a programmer, a junior programmer.
You're like
and you deal with code. This is your main concern. You try to get your code right, but between programmer and software developer, there is a difference. There's a thing missing, which is, let's say, you could call it business, for example. Yeah. If you say business plus programmer equals software developer, because you need to have the end-to-end responsibility. All that what we've just talked about today, you need to have that as part of as your mindset, your responsibility, and your skill set. In a good mix of that in order to be a developer. So you need to have the willingness to fix the problems of the business with your doing. So software developers can even be non-programmers, but software developers. So, even if ChatGPT or some OpenAI will, substitute the part of the programming on some day, we'll take it over, we can still be software developers because we fix the business problems. We know how to develop step by step in baby steps every day towards a product, towards an outcome, and then do it all over again in the cycle. Feedback loop. And this is what we need to learn,
Even if imagine a world where ChatGPT took over most of your coding, you would still have to do DevOps.
Yeah.
Because you would still have to define the processes of how often should ChatGPT deploy? How should ChatGPT respond to feedback? What does that feedback look like? How does that feedback loop influence our decision-making process? Is it influencing short-term decisions or long-term decisions? Is a deployment on Friday going to pivot our entire quarter? What is our cadence to our decision-making?
AI is simply a machine which overtakes the mechanical aspects of our work, but not the stuff you do with your mind, the power of your mind.
It might help you simulate a conversation. That might, it's like that the doc programming where you're talking to somebody and you're essentially brain dump. You're essentially filtering your thoughts by virtue of brain dumping to somebody, and then that's really helpful because then you can have let's say, intelligently articulated conversation with somebody. ChatGPT can be like that artificial synthetic friend that you can talk to and sort of brain dump and have a linguistic conversation with, not a compiler, not a compiled conversation with, not a semantic conversation, but like a linguistic, natural way of talking about a problem. But the bottleneck is the amount of responsible decisions you're prepared to make in your normal day. If the responsible decision is, I promised this feature would be done today, but I realized the pipeline is nowhere near, the pipeline does not support the level of feedback cadence we need. So even if I fix the bug, I won't know if I fixed it in 2 days. That's a problem, right? Because then if I rush, then I'm still 2 days late, because then I might have to go back next week on Wednesday. And that's the main problem. That's the main problem that has to be solved. And it's the engineer's job. Well, the engineers, it's the people around the engineer. Yeah, I want to separate out, and it's not about blame. It's not about if you're an engineer. I'm not saying you're at fault. My point is that there is zero efficacy in asking your manager what you should do, especially if they're non-technical. There is zero. Like you as a team, you and your peers should come up with a solution and say, hey, I think if we want to deliver, without spending the entire budget, we need to increase our frequency of feedback. Or I need to be able to test this without deploying it and waiting for feedback from Apple. Like I need some way of getting faster feedback back into the system, without spending the entire timeline, without spending the entire budget, without saying, yeah, it's done on Monday, and then maybe on Friday we'll know if it works or not. That's silly, because that prevents upper management, senior management from planning, because they say, hey, is it done? I don't know. I'll know next week. Well, that sucks. Then work sucks. The more your feedback pipeline sucks, the more your everyday, just normal day will suck.
It becomes stressful because you cannot forget that.
Because
you should not forget that there's still business. Business does have other requirements than software development teams have. So business is, how can we get to the next job, to the next client? How we get something which actually pays the entire tech organization. And once they have acquired a new lead, then they work on that lead. They make promises. Business always makes promises, bold promises actually, and then basically the project goes down to the development. And when you then not deliver, or it is okay to deliver late. Actually, it is okay as long as everyone knows about that. It doesn't mean that it's an ideal outcome, but it's better than not saying anything and then being late and everything goes
or thinking that feedback after the deadline is good enough.
It's not. So basically, because imagine you are then in a business. What are you going to tell the actual people who consuming your product? Maybe but when it's ready, next week, and then maybe we make the next promise, and it's not ready.
And then you speculate, right? And then your work sucks because you speculate, right? And that's one of the root causes of people ask me, Dennis, how should I estimate this? Dennis, how should I estimate this? And I always tell them just separate out the terminology of forecasting and estimating, and forecast using your data, and stop guessing, stop speculating. Because the more you speculate on a wider range of time, the more your work will suck. The more stressful everything will be. The more unpredictable everything will be. The more backlog you will need to have in your mind about, okay, what estimate did I promise to whom, and when did I promise that, and is that still relevant? And if not, do I need to let them know? They should, because then it centralizes all the burden of managing all this communication overhead to the person who gave the estimate. And maybe that's your VPE, maybe that's your engineering manager, maybe that's every individual team on the engineering team. Imagine what it is if you give estimates and people hold you accountable for this estimate as if they were forecasts, and then something goes wrong. Now there's 10 people needing to talk to 7 different stakeholders, letting them know, oh, this moved a little bit and that moved a little bit, and
but this is still insecurity. It's still not precise because it's just another guess now.
It's another guess. I was wrong with my guess, so now I will speculate, trying to figure out what percentage of progress we made on my wrong guess. It just drives me crazy. And I always tell them, just stop speculating. If your process requires you to speculate, there's a problem in your process. And I love Vasco Duarte's quote on this. There's 2 things with your process. You either trust it and it works, or you need to change it. There is no improving it. You're like, oh, I need to improve my bad process, or I need to improve my estimation skill. You got to change it. If it doesn't work, change it. If you deploy and you need a week to figure out whether everything works or not, that process is not serving you if you need more frequent cadence. If you want to plan every week, then you need feedback every day. If you want to plan every day, then you need feedback every hour. If you want to plan every quarter, then you need feedback every week. It's simple math, but we don't take it seriously. Because I can tell you a story that says, okay, I can plan the quarter, And in order for us to be on time at the end of the quarter, or even sooner, we have to be on time every day, every week. That means that this week should have looked like X. And if this week doesn't look like X on Friday, then that means we're now late. But then people always tell me, Dennis, but you're speculating. How do you know the entire project will be late if now we're off by 1 day? Won't we make that up along the way? And I'm like, no, because we planned the project to be really tight. And if we're off by 1 hour, then we're off by 1 hour. At the end of the project will be even more, because the further away it is, the more wrong we are.
Yeah, so you would assume that even if you lose a day this week, you will be faster by 2 days next week. No, you won't.
You won't. Software development. Because the reality
you are not faster than you thought.
Exactly, because the reality is that you were wrong, not just about the guesses you made speculatively about this week. This means that you're at least this much wrong about every guess that you made for the next 3 months. Which means that not only are you off by 1 day now, but everything that hasn't happened yet will also be off by 1 day every week. And it's gonna get worse. Okay, so basics of DevOps today.
We're having some more minutes, Dennis, and you have a hard
10 minutes. Yeah.
A hard thing
I have a hard stop because I have the book club about Accelerate right now.
Okay, so what can we to wrap up? So I think we've discussed everything, or everything on the agenda, and I think most things which are interesting to have a form of a deep dive into what is DevOps for small business. Is actually not so much different to other forms of businesses or sizes. What can we give as some kind of reading resources? What would you suggest? So we mentioned the DevOps handbook. We mentioned Accelerate, the Dora stuff. What
I think that's enough. Yeah, I think Accelerate is sort of like a Bible for that. So if you read, my ask would be, don't just read Accelerate. Apply it. Find something that hits a nerve for you and apply it in your business. Don't read it like a lexicon. Like read it like you would you're sick and you need a pill and you need it fixed right now. Like you need an actionable step. Use it like you would a manual for a framework that you're using and you're trying to implement something. Like, read it like that. That's also my recommendation for the book club. Like have an intention and then read the book and then find something that you need from the book and apply it. And then iterate on that. And then read the book again, but skip the chapter that you got the really important stuff for the previous step and now work on the next step. So be iterative on this. Be very... If part of your weekly, I would say rather than reading books, block time in your calendar to think about your process. Like spend at least an hour every week thinking about your process, maybe your personal process, your process at work, because that is where the learning happens. Okay.
I can recommend something. So I have basically all my books as audiobooks as well. And when you listen to them as audiobooks while you're doing something different, driving, walking, something, then you actually think differently. You intake the intake of the information is different.
You're forced to filter out more, so you remember your.
Yeah, it is more like a conversation you have. You hear your inner voice, responding to what you hear. You start to comparing it to your current thing, and this is how I think about our let's say pipeline structures and all this kind of stuff. And then I think, maybe sometimes I stop and I note something for myself. Some things I want to change, iterate, or a new idea. So this is how I actually work with those books. I listen to them more than I actually read them. So there are more decorations here.
I mean, look, it's very simple. I come from a technology and life coaching background. So my advice would definitely be, do not accumulate knowledge. Do not accumulate technical, theoretical knowledge. Focus on your business. What does the process in your business look like? If you read Accelerate, what one thing, not the entire book, and then let's change everything, let's do transformation. One thing, take one thing and apply it. And try to apply it in a week. Your year is just a series of weeks. It starts with tomorrow. It starts with week 1. Pick something to improve and make an improvement. Measure the improvement. Ask your team, survey your team. You don't need to measure anything. Just ask your team, what sucks? What sucks about working here? What sucks about working this way? What sucks about our pipeline? Because they know. And if they had the permission to do anything they wanted to deal with the thing that sucks, not only had the permission, but if they were encouraged to attack vigorously anything in the pipeline that makes people feel that they're miserable, you would have a much better process and a much better engineering culture and much better holistic DevOps. Empower them to do that. Just you, the leader, don't need to be involved with tactically implementing stuff. Just inspire your team to do so. Give them the space, cultivate the space for them to improve the process. A testing pipeline that is annoying, improve it. A code review process that is always slow, remove it. Try an alternative. Pair program more, ensemble more, do TDD, do TBD, trunk-based development. Skip your merge. If you need 2 reviews for a merge, get it down to 1. Get it down to 0 and auto-merge it. Or at least get it down to 1 and auto-merge when it comes to 1. Don't have these weird artificial handoff scenarios. And if you want a practical advice for homework, go over your process, go over what you did this week, and figure out every time you handed off something to somebody, and reassign a ticket to them. Just write down how many times you did that, and try to figure out how to remove all those processes, because those are the processes that prevent you from applying a real end-to-end DevOps. There should be no handoffs. You should be with a ticket from start to finish.
I will create a clip out of your end speech.
And scene.
No, and maybe one last thing. It's always good to have someone to talk with that about. When you can reflect with someone together, maybe a buddy, a colleague, a mentor, whoever. This will give you another perspective because you are challenged in that moment. And then you think in a different way than just thinking passive. Don't think passively about changes. If you want to change something, you need to start to think actively about changing things, and not, otherwise it would be, you would only see resistance everywhere. You don't need to change it. It's actually running and stuff. No, you need to say yourself, no, it's not running. I want to change something. I want to become better. I want to become better every day. And this is where you should go to. And then once you have, cultivated such a mindset and live this way of work as a tech leader, as a developer, doesn't matter. Then you see progress, and progress, is the foundation of happiness. Let's just mention that in every show. In the end, this is very important because
progress is the foundation of happiness.
It is because even our stream is a progress which shall improve ourselves. So,
but I would change that
as well.
I would change it to saying progress is the foundation of well-being. That you or fulfillment. Because sometimes I'm not happy when I'm super sore and tired, but I do feel fulfilled.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's actually true. So it's an iteration now. The next step, the V2 of this phrase. Okay.
Streaming.
Great.
Stream ups.
So thanks everyone for participating and great comments today. In the second half, Brian was definitely dominating the chat.
The more you keep me busy, the happier I am on these streams.
Yeah, so great. So we still have most of the people online. It's great to have. So we have next week, Wednesday, the next session with Gregor
Oystershek, another fellow Slovenian. Yeah,
right.
Another fellow Slovenian, and
will be a CTO topic. We will be 4 people in the stream. And Thursday will be announced. It's a secret still, right?
Secret. We can announce. We can announce if you want.
Do we know the topic?
I mean, we'll announce it. It's a secret.
It's a secret.
It's a secret.
Even to us, it's a secret.
So thank you all. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for sharing your evening with us and being here and asking all of your amazing questions. If you're watching the recording, thank you. Leave a like, subscribe anywhere, depending on which platform you're on. And give us some feedback, also on the logistics of how you're consuming this content. We are doing recaps every week on our newsletters about these streams and announcements. So Those are the best ways to stay in touch with us. I will just run the banner. No, that's the banner. There we go. And yeah, take care.
Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening. Goodbye together.
Goodbye.
So 4 more seconds, and we have 2 hours.
There we go. Okay, and we're off. Back to some elevator music. Adrian, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.